Hello, everyone. You're all welcome to our first meetup for the year 2025. My name is Linda Tiffel, and I am the convener of Women in Research, Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning. And Happy New Year to you all. It's great that you could all join. So we have an interesting topic that we'll be diving into shortly. But before that, if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, I would like to encourage you to do so while we get things going. So I will share my screen shortly just for us to have an idea of what our session will look like today. So if this is your first time joining, Women in RML is an online community or platform that seeks to engage women or accelerate the careers of women in the research, monitoring, evaluation, and learning space. And we are all about building networks. We are all about sharing knowledge and latest trends in RML, and also about bringing about transformation through the work that we do, and also anticipating that through the work that we are doing, there'll be impact that will bring about the lasting change that we all want to see in our fields of endeavor. However, these meetups are open to all. So as long as you identify as a research, monitoring, evaluation, and learning practitioner, you're always welcome to join our monthly sessions or other programs that we might be having later in the year. So I'll share my screen now, and I'll kindly confirm if you're able to see my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, so this is how our agenda would look like. So we'll have some icebreakers, and then I will come in to introduce our speaker. And of course, we'll have a presentation on the topic, how to develop an excellent terms of reference for impact evaluation studies. Then we'll have a Q&A or comment session, and then we'll have some announcements, and then we'll end the session for today. All right, so to our first icebreaker. So we've all resumed work. We are all back from our festivities, Christmas and New Year breaks. I would like as many that would want to share anything memorable or significant that you did during the Christmas or New Year break. Just a few thoughts, or if there's anything that you would want to share to encourage us, anything that happened during your break that you would want to share with all of us. You can drop your contributions in the chat, or you can also unmute as well and share with all of us. So anyone wants to share?
Hi, I can go.
Hi. All right, sure. Feel free.
Hi, I'm Trupti. I'm the one that's awake at an ungodly
Wow.
hour of 11 p.m.
Awesome.
Um,
Nice of you that you can join.
no, my pleasure. So I have been in Vietnam since late December, so I had the pleasure of spending my Christmas and New Year's here.
Okay.
Um, a very unique way of celebrating New Year's here is to have kind of traditional food with your loved ones. And I had made friends with a Vietnamese couple who, this was during the Christmas break, but then they invited us during the New Year's so that we could sit with them, break bread, and celebrate and bring in the New Year in a traditional way, like the Vietnamese do. And that was really heartening away from home, to be with absolutely new people who could have just as easily not invited me, but they did and made me part of their celebrations. Was really lovely way to ring in the new year. Thanks.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Trupti. Any more contributions? Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Okay, I can see introductions. So thank you, Trupti. Thank you, Danae. Hope I pronounce your name correctly. And Calvin for your introductions. Thank you so much. All right. Anyone else wants to share? Okay. Okay. I'll share and then we can move to the next icebreaker. So during the Christmas break, one thing that I did was to prepare some children towards their carols service or their Christmas production. So there was also singing and dancing, and yeah, they did a skit or a play. But I was mainly responsible for helping with their choir, their with their singing. Yeah, so that was fun. So these are children from yeah, as young as kindergarten age to like yeah, teenage years. So it wasn't always easy to get them all aligned on the same page. You know how it is like you have to come to their level and help them to grasp the lyrics of the songs. But interestingly, they picked up the songs very quickly. Yeah. And then another thing that I decided to also do during the break was to start swimming lessons. Yeah, I do have some basics in swimming, but I wanted to just upgrade my skills, add on a few strokes like freestyle, butterfly, and so on. So it's still in session. I'm not done yet, but yeah, I'm glad I started before yeah the year gets busy. So all right, so we can move on to the next icebreaker. So I'd like us to share any skill, anything new that you anticipate learning this year that could help you in your career development or as a person, any area that you see that you need a particular skill to help you to become better this year. Please feel free to share. You can type in the chat or you can also unmute and share with us all. Just give me a few minutes to think about what skills you would like to gain this year, what you're looking forward to learning as a professional. So we all know that skills can be classified as hard skills or soft skills. So please feel free to share any angle as far as skills are concerned. Anyone wants to share? Or maybe we're still thinking through, we're still planning, which is fine. Okay, so for the sake of time, we'll just end. Okay, so we have Tripti who has shared. So she said, I would love to learn how to disseminate evaluation results through storytelling done by community members. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I hope that through our sessions this year, yeah, you'll be able to acquire the skills and the knowledge to be able to do these things. All right, we have a few intros coming in. Thank you, Vida B, for your intro. Okay, so we can end this session. So we'll move on to the main reason why we're here. So I'm going to read out our speaker's profile before she comes on stage. Okay, so Winnie is an accomplished monitoring, evaluation, and learning professional with extensive experience overseeing and managing complex projects in international development and humanitarian contexts. She has diverse geographical expertise in East and Southern Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. She has demonstrated proficiency in conducting evaluations, developing proposals, and providing strategic MEL guidance to various non-governmental organizations, donors, and UN agencies. Driven by a passion for social impact and sustainable development, Winnie is dedicated to driving positive change and empowering vulnerable and marginalized communities worldwide through evidence-based monitoring, evaluation, and learning practices. So, colleagues, friends, participants, please let's welcome our speaker, Winnie Moya, to help us dive into the development of excellent terms of reference for impact evaluation studies.
I'm also my
All right.
screen.
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay, so as Linda rightly introduced, so my name is Winnie Moya. I am a monitoring, evaluation, and learning specialist, but also a consultant currently. So I will be taking you through this session from the lens of having been on both sides. And by that, I mean I have been the applicant of proposals, of writing a proposal. So that is, answering to terms of reference that have been advertised. But I've also been on the other spectrum of advertising over terms of reference for a consultant. So I feel that it's very interesting to be on both sides. Let me start by also saying that there's no perfect terms of reference. There are good ones, and that's why I use the word actionable, because it's one that you can be able to use to form a good proposal, and for the organization that is advertising to also be able to sift through, the various proposals and get a good consultant. So let's start from the basics of what is terms of reference. So the basic understanding for me, or the basic explanation that I can give, is that it's a guide. It's really a guide for everybody. So that means for the people who are advertising for this, it can be an evaluation, can be an assessment, it can be a third-party monitoring, any scope of work that needs to be done by an external consultant. So it's a guideline really for one, the advertiser. So it can be an organization. Most of the time it's a non-governmental organization, an NGO, to be able to sift through, as I said, the various proposals and see who rightly fits what the expectations are. And on the other hand, for consultants who are applying, you can be able to use this as your guide for you to formulate the best fit proposal. So what does that terms of reference contain? So it contains a scope of work. It contains an evaluation objectives. So these are really the purpose of conducting this evaluation. I'll get into more details just shortly. It also contains a methodology, which is also called an approach, or the way in which you're going to do the work, the actual assignment. So that is the evaluation or the assessment, and also the deliverables that are expected. So these are like reports or presentations. And basically it sets the expectations for both ends, defining roles, like who is to do what. So you'll often see sections like the consultant is expected to do, and this is outlaid there. And then on the other hand, also the organization has a role to play to support the consultant. And this is usually in areas like providing the needed documentation for desk review. Sometimes they also support logistically and at least do the introductions to any interviewees or other organizations and partners that they're working with. So hence laying the foundation for successful evaluation or an assessment. So basically, these are the main components of terms of reference. You will often see this as also the headlines or the headings that are in most terms of references. Some are usually put together, like they're joined, but overall, at least a good one, an actionable terms of reference should have each of these components. So I'll expound on each of them in the next section, but let me just first go through the project context. So the project context is also sometimes referred to as the background, and this is in twofold. So this can first be for the organization, whereby you talk a bit about the organization. So for example, let's take Women in RML, for example, as the organization that is posting these terms of reference. So we can have 1 or 2 paragraphs where we are introducing Women in RML. We can talk about when it was formed, what is the scope, what exactly does Women in RML do, who are the main focus people, what is the mission, what is the vision, just a highlight, overall, and then going into the project. So for instance, if this organization has, especially when it has many projects, it's important to expound on the specific project that we are going to embark on this evaluation. And here we talk about just again the high level information. So talking about like how long this project has been going on. So for instance, if it's an impact evaluation, projects have ended and should have ended even for at least 1 year, because we're talking about the big picture. We're talking about the long-term impact of this project. So the project is already completed. So we have even potentially you could have already done even a final evaluation, but at least maybe a midterm evaluation or some sort of assessment at the end of the project. So you do have some data, you do have some figures that you can share that can really help the consultant to be able to give, a good proposal, and thinking about especially the numbers of the sample size, potentially the geographical areas, and the entire context that the project covered. So that's very important to give. Remember, usually most of the project information may not be publicly available. What could be publicly available is about the organization, maybe just a snapshot of what the project is on their website, but not to so much detail, especially if it's a project that is going on. Maybe for an impact evaluation could be because the project has ended. Some people publish the reports on their website, but it's not all. So it's important to give some information, at least to help with that, to help the consultant do, best fit proposal. Then the other components are the evaluation objectives, the scope of work, proposed approach, which is also called the methodology, the key deliverables, and the dates and deadlines. So we'll capture this just shortly, each of them, as we talk about how to formulate an actionable terms of reference. So these are the steps that you'll go through. These are the things that you need to think about. And you'll see they're aligned with those headings. So step 1 is being clear on your objectives. And these are the evaluation objectives, but also the overall why. So why do you need to do an evaluation? Why do you need to do, if it's an impact evaluation, why do you need to do a final evaluation? Why do you need to do a midterm evaluation? Why do you need to do an assessment? Ask yourself that question yourselves. That is, the organization. And by that, I mean, this is not the mandate of the monitoring and evaluation persons only. It should be a conversation that is being had together with the programmatic team and also the senior management team. So it should be, especially because I would say in my experience, there's sometimes a difference in expectations, from what you expect from the report or from this evaluation, from the programmatic side and from the M&E side. So it's important to have this conversation at the beginning, before you've set out the terms of reference, but even as the project is ongoing. Remember, you're doing monitoring as the project is ongoing. So there are already some questions that are coming up that you would want some deeper analysis or some in-depth analysis, which can be done at an evaluation stage. So those are the questions that you need to keep in mind. So think about also, what do you want to use those findings for? For example, you could be using the findings to extend, to ask for further funds to extend the project. So maybe have a phase 2 of the project. or it could be that you want to use this piece to lobby for something. Maybe it's a conference that you're going to, and maybe some policy reforms, maybe it could contribute towards this. So think about that, because that will really frame how you'll set your expectations at the terms of reference. Okay. So you'll also be very clear. Once you have these objectives, you'll be very clear when you're communicating with the consultant, even as you're going through that tendering process. So let me also mention that there's no finite rule or finite number of objectives that you should have, but I would say that between 3 to 5 is a good number. At least, yeah, I would say 5 maximum. Why I say this? Because sometimes we have so many expectations and so many objectives that things really get lost in translation between the organization and the consultant, and they're not able to deliver on each of those things. And also think about that you have a finite time to do this scope of work. So, in my experience, sometimes you have an organization that is not very clear on their objectives. And so sometimes this keeps on changing as you continue conducting the evaluation during the evaluation process. And so the expectations start changing, or coming, new objectives start coming up, and it starts becoming confusing. So that leads you to, it doesn't portray a good picture, first of all, but secondly, it really makes the consultant do a little bit more work. Sometimes you might need to collect more data, you might need to do a different analysis, you might need to even sometimes go back to the drawing board, worst case scenario, but it's really taxing, and it's not a good experience on both ends, because there's just lack of clarity. So this step is really important, and it should be, given the attention that it deserves. So step 2, let me just move this little nugget. So step 2 is the outlining the scope of work. So this may seem obvious, but it needs some key attention. So the 3 main bullet points there are like guidelines that you can use. So for larger organizations, sometimes they have various projects that they might want to undertake, like that impact evaluation. So for maybe they have a common theme, and by theme or thematic area, I mean the sector. So I mean things like education, nutrition, child protection, etc. So those are like, the different sectors that you have. So it's important to choose which projects you want to focus on as the organization. And this again is being done in conjunction. The M&E team is working with the program team and also with the management team. So everyone who really needs to give their input needs to be in this conversation. Why? Because, the program team are sometimes more hands-on. They are aware of what's been going on. Not that the M&E is not, but they're more technically also adept, and they are able to say, these projects should be, they should also give, the reasons why certain projects should be selected rather than others. And again, shouldn't be based on, these are the good projects, quote unquote. It should really be a good mix of projects if you're doing more than one project at the same time. So it should be, projects that we are actually able to see, if it's an impact evaluation, especially projects that have already gone on and ended for a certain duration of time. But also if they're, interrelated, they're in the same thematic area. So for example, like nutrition projects, you could work with also health projects. Health and nutrition are usually, they can merge, they have some point of merging, or you have those that have a gender lens, or like child protection and maybe nutrition, those that can, you can merge the two. So think about that also. Think about which geographical areas. You may have one project, but it's being carried out in different geographical areas. So think about the focus that the areas that you want to focus on. And for you to select this, also think about accessibility by the consultant. So, for instance, like in Kenya, we have various counties. Some counties are more remote than others, and you may get a consultant who is not based in the area where, excuse me, that you're working. So that means that they need to access it potentially, possibly by road. So let's say somewhere like Moyale, which is really, it's far if you're coming from maybe like Nairobi or anywhere else which is not in the northern part of the country. So it's quite far. So think about, logistically, that would mean that even if you're not facilitating as the organization, the budget for travel might be quite higher than just having someone who is, having the scope of work be somewhere really accessible, more accessible than that. So think about that. Think about also the timelines that you have. If you're planning to maybe do this presentation at a conference, maybe that is what's going to determine by when you should have this information. And so backtrack and think about by when you should do the advertisement with the terms of reference, giving enough time for the advert, for the recruitment, and then for the consultancy itself. And then also the timeline is guided by the first two objectives, the first two bullet points rather. So the number of geographical areas that you select, the more that you select, it could be done simultaneously, but sometimes the team that you select may be few. And so it will take a bit longer. That's again also something to just think about. And again, also the number of projects that you're selecting. It could be also, again, done simultaneously, but sometimes, the capacity might not be there with the selected consultant. So these are just things to think about as well. And you should have some flexibility, again, in these things, but already have in mind what you desire. So step 3, my slides not moving. Apologies. Okay, there we go. So step 3 is to provide the methodology. So I've written this as optional because it does not have to be prescribed, particularly in detail. So the methodology is how the data is to be collected. So this is things like interviews, focus group discussions, surveys, case studies, etc. So these are the methods that that are going to be used to collect the raw data. It may be that you just indicate that you want a mixed method approach, and that is sufficient. Or you may say that you require surveys. You may have like should I call them like your non-negotiables, and you may indicate that surveys must be done, and then additionally qualitative data collection. So for the qualitative, maybe the team might decide which methods to use. Most of the time, it's usually interviews, but they can decide, to also do maybe focus group discussions as well. So this here it's a bit optional. There's like some room to negotiate, and also this discussions on the methodology, you can leave it open to see how the proposal comes in, and also have this conversation when you're having the interviews, because you can see maybe which approach is best fit, and also see if there's some other innovative ways to collect this data that are prescribed to you by the consultants who are tendering for this process. So yeah, that's it on methodology. And then we have step 4 is the evaluation criteria. So this is really important. The picture there is from the OECD DAC criteria. Anyone who is in evaluation knows it. So the OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and this is it's a globally used set of criteria, 6 criteria for evaluation. So it's not, let me say, it's not a methodology, it's an approach. So it's sort of like a a framework, I would say, and it's one of the frameworks. So this is usually, I would say, the bare minimum, like the one that you should definitely use as first, but you can also add in other frameworks as depending on also the organization. So let's say like some organizations have their own principles that you need to abide by or ways of working. For instance, like the UN bodies, they have their sets of principles that you need to abide by, and they usually, most of the time, they link them or they highlight like which ones they are there, and you need to at least go through them, especially as a consultant. Now, I'm speaking as a consultant, you as before you apply, just be aware of them, use them when you're doing your proposal, because they also ask things like how have you applied them before and what is your understanding. So for this one, this OECD DAC criteria is quite straightforward. There are 6 criteria. There's relevance, coherence, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, and sustainability. I won't go through them in detail, but you can see even just from this, and this is just, you can see it on their website. So once you go to OECD, like literally OECD, their website, they have this there, and they have even more questions that can really help you to understand what is expected from each. So basically, in the terms of reference, you can decide to expound further on these 6 criteria, or just indicate that you would like the OECD DAC criteria to be used. So whichever way, works, because the criteria is also, it's available for people to see it on the website. And then I would say that sometimes this, so as I said, this is a terms of reference that can be used for various evaluations. But for instance, if it's not an impact evaluation, there's the impact, the bottom left. Yeah, bottom left. You may not adhere to this specific criteria, but usually what I've done in the past is have like potential impact, especially for projects that have already been implemented for quite some time, and maybe by more than like 3 years or so. So you can kind of already see a trajectory of some potential impact, which is going to be there later on. That and sustainability, those two are usually, you can measure aspects of them, but not necessarily the entire spectrum of impact and sustainability if it's not an impact evaluation. But the rest really apply, and they guide, they're all interlinked, I feel, and they're very relevant for doing an evaluation. So it's an easy way to think about the questions, even when you're setting your questions for your interviews. It's a good guide, or even for the focus group discussions. Yeah, as you're setting your tools, this is an important criteria to adhere to. So the last step is to define the deliverables, and these are like what you expect. These are the outputs. So these are like the report. So like that snapshot there is like a USAID report. This is publicly available. Just go to the USAID platform and you can see it. So you can think about the number of reports that you want, the type of reports. Sometimes, you also say the number of pages that you expect. Some reports can be as short as maybe 20 pages, I think could be, or even 10. It just depends on the project. And you can also ask for a brief summary, so maybe 2 pages or so for the reports. And also if you want some presentations. So for instance, as has been given an example, maybe you want to actually go and present this information. You can ask for a presentation to be part of the output. So your work is half done because maybe you want to just present the findings of this project, and then you can alter it and adjust it accordingly. So you can also, if you need, some photos, videos, this is a point that it should be communicated, or even a documentary. So such things are really important for you to put there as expectations, especially where, so things like documentary, because this is not commonly done, for the consultant to be able to know if they have capacity to do it or not. They can also outsource or have someone come in and support them with that. And then think about how this information is going to be shared. So these reports, these photos, these videos. When you're collecting data, this is also, well, this doesn't have to be written in the terms of reference, but you need to think about it also before getting the consultant, onboarding the consultant, is thinking about when they're collecting the data, is it going to be on your server, or is it going to be that they share it? Which platform will it be shared? We all know issues of data security, privacy, confidentiality, and sometimes this has information of community members, private information, especially their names, could be their ID numbers, where they live, things that you can actually trace to people. So think about that and set it in the TOR. So those are the 5 steps, and that's basically it. So I would just add like a few tips to help you now when you're formulating. Is one, to avoid jargon, abbreviations, and acronyms. I feel that the NGO world has a lot of acronyms and abbreviations that may not be very well known. So you need to think about it like you're creating these terms of reference for a layman. So it needs to be simple language. If you're using acronyms, make sure that you've put in the names in full, and abbreviations as well. So also think about the time. I've talked about this, but it's really such a key point. Providing adequate time for the proposal submission. You need to think about certain things that are going on. So for instance, like now we know there are some parts of the world that are actually having some New Year festivities. So think about, if you're conducting a consultancy in those areas and you're targeting consultants in those areas, they're not really able to apply within, let's say, a week or two. For them, the festivities take quite some time. And think about also, even if you were to get a consultant, if they were to go into the field at this time, again, also the community members are also in those festivities. So think about those timings. Think about even when the normal Christmas is there for the rest of the world, or the New Year celebration. We have Ramadan also coming up. Think about those timings as well. And then providing now adequate time is also thinking of maybe after a month of having the submissions open, and you only have maybe 2 proposals, you may need to reapply. You may need to reopen the advertisement. So just have that contingency. So don't have like a very strict timeline. And sometimes it's also is a conversation that you need to have with your donor, because they also have some expectations of the timelines, and it's good to also give them that information of what is really happening in those areas and what the provisions are there for to mitigate any issues. And then also for delivering the evaluation, things happen. Data collection especially usually tends to be the time that is tends to take longer most of the time than usual, just because you need to get these people on board, the people that you're interviewing. You need to contact them first and ask for some time. It could be busy people, especially like anyone really is busy, but some people are more, maybe they're traveling more, or they're just not available for that hour that you're asking for. So think about that. Think about also that back and forth that is usually there when you do your draft report. Then the organization needs to go through maybe 3 or 4 people looking at it. And these are people with also different calendars. They don't have the time. So really, this usually stretches sometimes a lot, sometimes more than others. But it's just important, as I say, to stay flexible and give the best case scenario, especially in your terms of reference. You should have, when you're giving the timelines, you can say that you plan to have the consultant onboarded by this period, and not maybe necessarily giving a date. You can just give like a month. I think that's usually better. And then now you have that conversation. Once you've onboarded them, you talk about now what is feasible and what is not from both ends. so that you're not pressing the consultant and the consultant is also not taking so much time. There needs to be respect both ways. Then I think another important one is providing an email that consultants can reach out to you for clarifications. So this usually happens that sometimes you may have omitted something, human is to error. And again, the organization is the one formulating the terms of reference. We are coming from the point of having a wealth of knowledge about this project. We've worked with it, for years. So we know everything. So we assume that we've given enough information, but sometimes we haven't. So have that. Sometimes you can have it just maybe for a certain period and then have it closed. But it's important to address those concerns or clarifications as they come in. And I've seen, some consultancies, especially the bigger ones that sometimes even necessitate consortiums, they usually send out all the questions that have been asked and their answers. They send them to all the people who were interested in the tender. So you're able to get the information. Maybe you hadn't even thought of some questions, but this really helps you to again customize your proposal to be best fit for the work. And then lastly, having a set budget in mind, guided by the scope of work. So remember, you're also asking for a financial proposal. And I haven't talked about finances here just because in the terms of reference, it's not really a must that you put in like a budget. Some people do, I mean, most usually don't in my experience, but you can ask anyway. You can ask. This is an opportunity to ask at the email. When you have an email, you can ask maybe what is the budget or what is, they can give you a range as well. But it's important as an organization to already have that budget in mind so that you can be able to know who you're going to eliminate. Maybe people who are really way over budget, and even if you ask for a negotiation, they would probably still be way above the budget. And then sometimes this budget is already set at the beginning of the project. We all know that we set those budgets as much as changes usually occur as the project is implemented, but the M&E is usually already given an allocation. So this could also have been, the evaluations could have been factored in. Impact evaluation, on the other hand, maybe not so much. It could have a budget on its own, but it's also a discussion that should have been had from the onset of the project. And then, of course, the donor could have also, you could have a donor who is going to fund this, so they already have a set budget for it. So I think with that, you're empowered to be able to do your terms of reference. That's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to hear from you any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Renee, for giving us such an in-depth overview of what an excellent TOR for impact evaluation studies should entail. All right, so the floor is open for questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to, you can raise up your hand and unmute yourself, or you can also drop your questions in the chat. Okay, so we have a question from Vida B. Okay, Vida B, you can go. After that, I'll invite Kelvin to follow after Vida. So Vida, please, you can unmute and ask Winnie your question.
Apologies, Linda. I accidentally raised my hand. I wanted to
Okay.
clap for her presentation.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation, though.
All right.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Kelvin.
Kelvin, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm having challenges how to use this gadget, but thank you so much, Winnie, for the good presentation. Mine is not a question, maybe just to complement 2 points. Maybe one of the things that I find also very important to add when coming from a point when you're drafting terms of references for consultants is always adding any reference materials or links to reference materials that they may find useful when they're doing the application. That's number one. And also number two is quality assurance references or ethical standards of the organization. Some organizations are very strict when it comes to certain ethical practices. So I also find it very useful if you indicate that for the consultants so that they don't make an error in the application. Thanks, and over.
Thank you, Kelvin. Yeah, that's a good additions, good points. I totally agree. I think definitely the quality standards come in where I was talking about the evaluation criteria as well. You can add the applicable ones. These are like the ISO, but also some organizations have their own, as you've rightly said. Thanks, Kelvin. Precious, you can have your hand up.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation there. I have I think it's not really a question, but it's a comment. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So my observation with most of the terms of reference, they tend to overlook the issue of evaluation theories. I always emphasize the fact that there is indeed a difference between research and evaluation. So when we're talking about evaluations, it is very important and it's incumbent upon the sponsoring organization or the client to be specific about which evaluation theories are going to guide the evaluation. Mind you, this is an impact evaluation. Besides, any form of evaluation actually needs to be guided by an evaluation theory. That's my belief, though I see a lot of organizations tend not to be, upfront about this. They then leave consultants or evaluators to choose whether to go the research route or not, because it's still possible. Like you added the dark framework into the terms of reference. So some people have found a quick fix into the whole thing by using the dark framework. I think it has to be emphasized that evaluation theories are pretty necessary. Then the other thing is about the budget. While it has been used as a screening tool, I think the people must be upfront and give it out as it is. Because sometimes you're losing out on a skilled evaluator just because they put a figure that is astronomical because they didn't have an idea of the size of your pot. Yeah, I think it's just good practice. Even in literature, I mean, in theory, if you look at the standard terms of reference components, the budget is there. So let's just tell them how much the assignment is worth. Yeah, I think that's my contribution. Unfortunately, I joined a bit late and I missed the first component of the presentation. Otherwise, thank you so much. That's my contribution for now.
That's okay. Thank you, Precious. I do agree with you. I think yeah, the budget's definitely it's a contentious issue, and sometimes you coming from a consultant, sometimes you bid for a work and you end up doing much more work than is the amount that you quoted for. So you really feel like, yeah, it should be really posted. Just like when you apply for a job, you would prefer that they just tell you upfront how much is this the salary going to be. So I agree. I think best practices, that's definitely one of the best practices that should be there. Okay. Any other question, comments? Okay, I see a question, Shruti. So thank you for your presentation. If I'm drafting the TOR as someone seeking consultant, is it okay to put in an ask or suggestion for team composition, international or national? Yes, yeah. So you do ask for, typically it's the CV. Yeah, okay. Typically it's the CVs that you're asking for the team. whether it's national or international, it depends on what your preference is. I mean, asking for the CVs and then you can vet from there. I think it depends on also if your project, where your project is geographically. So do you prefer a local, or does it really matter? You know, so this just depends on what you prefer. So the team, you see, this is the part of the vetting. So when you're constructing the terms of reference, it's not really something that you're thinking about your ideal consultant, of course. And that's why I said if you prefer local or international, but when you're now advertising it is when you do ask for, that is part of the technical proposal. So the CVs of the team members, and that's where you ask them to, I mean, that's where you will see their nationalities most of the time is part of that. The CVs is displayed there. And again, also, let me say that that's where you'll also see, it's also interlinked to the financial, because you'll see the number of days per team member. So you could have like a mix of international and national, but maybe the international person could be maybe the director of the organization, but they have limited days. So more days would be for the local consultant. So this could be the person who's actually doing the data collection, or the main work, the main research. So again, it's now up to the organization. Are you up to looking at the team? Is it important for them to be international, national, or is it about also how many days and how much they've quoted? Because that's also a consideration that comes from those that being national or international. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, okay. Kevin has also added, maybe asking for international experience would be better to ask. That is, if you're looking for certain experience. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so it also sometimes depends on even the scope of work to get, those. But I think right now, there are so many consultancy firms. It's also about where you do your advertisement for the terms of reference. Okay, Maureen, I see a question. Is it okay as a bidder to reference and cite your works as a consultant submitting an evaluation proposal? As a bidder to reference and cite your works? Yes, so if I get your question correctly, so yes, when you're doing your proposal, it's important to put in references, because this builds your case and it builds your credibility. It is more than okay. You should definitely do it. I would say 3 is a good number. 2 or 3 people is usually a good number to have. Usually, I mean, not all cases, but sometimes, the organizations may actually look or contact these referees or references to see the type of work that you've done, the quality of work that you've done. You can also, if you have any publicly available reports that you have done in your consultancy or as a consultant, it's good to link them as well in your proposal. So yeah, that's a good idea to have them. It builds your case, definitely. And I see Precious has also added that experience and team composition may be necessary to guide the bidders. Yeah.
Okay. I think we still have time we can take 2 more questions. So if participants still want to get some clarification on anything that Winnie has presented, you can still go ahead and ask, or you can also share your comments or any experiences you might have had also in your line of work in developing TORs for impact evaluation studies. Yes, everyone is fine.
Maybe let me add the
Okay.
perspective of a consultant as
Okay.
oh, sorry, Precious, come in. Yeah, it's okay. You can.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to raise my hand, but unfortunately I couldn't find the icon. Yeah. So I was saying, sometimes we talk about impact evaluations, but we don't really go deeper. And we tend to sort of mix them with any other evaluations. It could be midterm review, it can be end of project evaluation. But when we look at impact evaluations, there is a bit more that is needed there, because it's not just uh, talking about what the project achieved in terms of the evaluation criteria, the DAC framework. That's why earlier I mentioned the issue of evaluation theories. This is I always find impact evaluation including things like quasi experiments, and things like that. And there's need for counterfactuals, and a lot more. I'm just trying to emphasize the need for us to be specific about the scope of work that is covered when we are conducting impact evaluations, and the kind of experience that is needed there. Most importantly, the rigor or the scientific processes that are required whenever we're doing impact evaluations. Yes, they may be qualitative, but mostly they are quantitative or, mixed. Yeah.
I agree, Precious. It's a really important point. And I think even the impact evaluations that are there, I agree. Sometimes they don't really fall into that element. They're more like final evaluations. And yeah, I'm just thinking back to some consultancy I've done, and the word impact is really misused. Okay, so I see some comments here. So Kelvin says that a tip: if the budget has not been asked for, I think it's safer not to include your financial proposal so that you do not limit yourself if selected. Interesting. Okay. Janice says, often you have overlapping themes or areas of impact that come up, often with intersectional outlooks. I'm not sure if I understand. Overlapping themes or areas of impact that come up. Do you have suggestions on how to set evaluation parameters under such complex impact evaluation spaces? I'm not sure if I really understand your question. Okay, overlapping themes. What do you mean by areas of impact?
Thank you, Winnie. Sorry, maybe
Okay,
I can elaborate a bit more. Thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. So, for instance, I'm working with a consortium of researchers at the moment, and majority of them are tech. Looking at impact, you're looking at both, like, say the example is a project on improving water quality in this particular river, but you're also looking at how that water quality is being, I guess, worsened by the social, economic, and technical aspects of that river. So impact needs to be assessed not just on water quality, it also needs to be assessed on, who is involved, who are the actors present, and what do their roles have to do in that quality. Do you have any suggestions? Because sometimes when you have projects that are intersectional, or they would include components, say, of gender in a technical space, then you're needing to look not only at like tracer studies of employment, but you also need to look at cultural value systems in that space and trying to find where impact gets drawn. Or is it a case of you simply follow impact parameters based on the donor?
Okay, that's an interesting evaluation. I don't think I've really been in that dilemma per se, but I would say for sure I'm just thinking of the objectives as the first thing, like what was the start point? Because I know some things come up as you're already doing the evaluation, and that kind of maybe changes the gear, but it's really important to stay focused on per se the objectives. This could be maybe unintended or unintended probably. Think of outcomes, but I guess maybe could lead up to an impact. It may not necessitate that much analysis again, because I don't know the real the evaluation itself. It depends on also really what is the data that's significant to really necessitate that more analysis and that cross-sectional analysis. So you can maybe do, if you're doing some correlations to see if it's really significant. And yeah, because I feel like sometimes, I mean, there are many conclusions that could come up, there are many potential that could come up, but they could, doesn't mean that they're all valid per se. They need to, if you have enough data to really run those analysis correlations and simulations, maybe you can go through to that degree. Especially if it's an impact evaluation, there's probably enough capacity. But yeah, so I think be guided by the objectives for sure, but again, be guided by if you can go back to, I'm guessing as you've mentioned, maybe the funder is the one who has necessitated this impact evaluation. So maybe they're best fit to also guide if it's necessary, because sometimes you might do so many things that they may not even use in future, because again, sometimes we have so much data that is not used as M&E. That's usually the saddest part. So before going to really the extreme, and sometimes it's important to also highlight if you feel that it's really warranted and it's really something significant and interesting, it could also warrant a new study or a new project, and then that's valid to me.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so I think we can end our Q&A session. All right, we still have one comment coming in. So Precious is saying, broaden your scope in terms of methodology or approach and recast the theory of change. I believe this is in response to Dane's question. All right. Great. Thank you all for making this Q&A session lively, and I'll hand over to you, Winnie, just for any final closing remarks or closing thoughts that you want to leave with us as we draw the curtain down on today's session.
Thanks, Linda. So I think I would say that I think I saw someone in the comments write that they want to get into evaluation. So I would say, like, it's not as complicated as it may sound. I think with time, and there's so many resources out there these days that you can be able to do it. You can align yourself with consultancy firms. You can work with a consultant and be able to gain experience on the go. Things are really evolving. There's a lot of technology which can also help us to, do things like literature review. So also, have those skills. And you can be able to grow in it. And when you're applying for proposals, I think the biggest thing I would say is really just align yourself to what the terms of reference is. Don't answer your own questions. Just do as it says. Even if you feel that you're an expert in this area, just really align yourself according to what is there. Your experience will be seen because your CV will be there. So This will be okay. Okay, so yeah, and all the best. Thank you.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you so much. Participants, feel free to appreciate Winnie for the brilliant presentation and for the depth of knowledge that she has shared with us today. And yeah, we'll end very soon. But before we finally leave or close out, I'd like to just give a few announcements. So I've shared the feedback form for our session for today. Please do well to give us feedback on anything that has resonated with you from today's session, or anything you think we can improve on, or if you have suggestions on any topics we can do in the future, please feel free to share. Or if you also want to recommend a resource person, or if you yourself you want to come on board as a speaker, you can also indicate in the form. I've also indicated where you can get more updates on our sessions moving forward. So we're on LinkedIn. I've shared the link, and I've also shared the link to the Women in RML page on X. And then we also have a channel on YouTube where you can access previous sessions that we've had. And today's session will be uploaded there as well. So for those of us who would like to recap, or for anyone who might have wanted to be here and for some reason couldn't, can always go there and review or just catch up with the sessions that have been missed. All right, so we'll end it here. And yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you all for making time to be here. Some joined very late in their time zones. For some of us, probably it's the end of our working day. And for some of us, maybe we are starting. And yeah, I think we can end the session here. And yeah, I wish all of us a happy end to the month of January, and the end of the week as well. So thank you all for joining, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.